A couple vanished on a simple road trip. 31 years later, their own DNA caught the killer. J. Cook and Tanya van Cuylenborg were a young Canadian couple from Saanich, British Columbia, planning nothing more than a short overnight trip. On November 18, 1987, the couple drove from British Columbia to the Seattle area in a van owned by Cook's father. It was supposed to be a simple, low-budget adventure. Instead, it became one of the most haunting unsolved cases in Pacific Northwest history. When the couple failed to return home, their families grew worried and reported them missing within days. On November 24, Van Cuylenborg's body was discovered in a ditch in rural Skagit County, Washington. She had been raped and shot. Investigators were horrified by the brutality of the crime scene. Cook's body was found 2 days later, more than 50 miles away, covered with a blue blanket. He had been strangled and beaten. The distance between the two bodies made the case even more disturbing for detectives working it. The couple's stolen van was later found abandoned, containing disturbing physical evidence left behind by the killer. Duct tape and restraints recovered from the scene carried biological evidence that investigators knew could one day identify a suspect. But in 1987, DNA technology was still in its infancy. The killer left behind gloves he had worn, but with virtually no DNA testing available at the time, the case went cold. For years, investigators chased leads that went nowhere. Several possible suspects were questioned over the years, including known serial killers active in the Seattle area at the time. Each time, forensic testing cleared them. The DNA profile recovered from the scene simply didn't match anyone in existing police databases. Slowly, the case slipped into cold case files, unsolved for over 3 decades. In 2018, investigators tried a radical new approach. A composite sketch of the suspect was released based on DNA collected from semen found at the crime scene, using a process called snapshot DNA phenotyping. This technology could estimate a suspect's likely physical appearance directly from their genetic code alone. It was a groundbreaking, unprecedented step for a case this old. Then came the real breakthrough. The case was investigated using genetic genealogy, uploading the killer's DNA to the public website GEDmatch, the same platform that helped identify the Golden State Killer suspect. Genetic genealogist Cece Moore built a family tree using a distant relative's DNA match, slowly narrowing down the killer's identity. Remarkably, Moore identified the likely suspect in just 2 hours of analysis. The trail led investigators to a shocking and unexpected suspect. On May 18, 2018, the Snohomish County Sheriff announced the arrest of William Earl Talbott II, a local truck driver, for the murders. A relative of Talbott's later revealed she had been contacted by investigators about a family member being tied to the case, describing the moment as deeply unsettling for her entire family. Talbott was found guilty in June 2019 of 2 counts of aggravated first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. For the victims' families, it was the answer they had waited 3 decades to hear. J. Cook's sister said the case would never have been solved without DNA evidence and the genetic genealogy database that made it possible. But the story took another turn. In December 2021, an appellate court overturned Talbott's conviction, citing juror bias during the original trial. Prosecutors immediately began preparing for a second trial, determined not to let the case go cold again. The families braced themselves for another long legal battle after decades of waiting for justice. In December 2022, the High Court reinstated the guilty verdicts in the 1987 murders of the young Canadian couple. After 35 years, genetic science had finally delivered lasting justice. The case of J. Cook and Tanya van Cuylenborg remains one of the most powerful examples of how a single strand of DNA can outlive decades of silence, and finally speak the truth.